Hi there, I'm your host, Adam Cooke, welcoming you to the latest edition of Telile 24/7. On this week's show, we'll talk about tourism. We're going to speak to the head of Cape Breton's largest tourism lobby group about how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the summer and even fall prospects for tourism around Cape Breton Island. We'll also update you on the question of whether Richmond County can continue to be governed by a warden system, or whether residents will soon get the chance to vote on whether they'd like to have a mayor at large representing them on the county level. And we'll speak with the chairman of the board for Strait Area Transit. The local transit cooperative has had a difficult spring as a result of COVID-19. We'll get an update from Jim Mustard on whether we should expect to see Strait Area Transit vehicles on the road anytime this summer. But we begin, as always, with an update on how COVID-19 is impacting life right here in Nova Scotia. Some more restrictions were eased in terms of social distancing, and there are some big changes coming, not only in terms of whether we can get together or not, but also in terms of how restaurants, businesses, and other things that have been shut down for quite a while are soon going to be reopening. Here's how it all breaks down. The first thing you need to know is that Nova Scotia now has a new gathering limit. It used to be 5 people, now that limit has gone up to 10 as of May 29th. However, physical distancing of 2 meters or 6 feet is still required, except among members of the same household or the same family household bubble. Don't forget that this bubble can't be any more than 2 households. Now, where does this new 10-person gathering limit apply? Well, it's in effect indoors and outdoors. There is an exception, however, for outdoor weddings and funeral services. Those can have up to 15 people. But the 10-person gathering limit does apply to things like social gatherings, arts and culture activities like theater performances and dance recitals, faith gatherings, and sports and physical activity. It also applies to businesses whose main function is gatherings, such as theaters, concerts, festivals, and sporting activities, and to businesses that are too small to ensure physical distancing. So why have these rules about social distancing in Nova Scotia changed so much in the past couple of weeks? Well, that's largely because the number of new daily COVID-19 cases in the province has shrunk dramatically over the past month. For example, as of midnight on Sunday, May 31st, there were only 14 active COVID-19 cases throughout the entire province. On Sunday, May the 31st, there was only 1 new COVID-19 case discovered, and on 2 of the previous 3 days, there weren't any new COVID-19 cases. That has led to some big changes, not only in how many different people can get together for a social gathering in Nova Scotia, but also what kinds of businesses are slowly getting the green light to reopen over the next few days. First off the block, some big news for those of us who are outdoors enthusiasts. Starting on Thursday, June the 5th, private campgrounds can open for all types of campers, and provincial campgrounds will open to Nova Scotians on June 15th, with the reservation line for those campgrounds opening June the 8th. Both of these types of campgrounds will operate at a reduced capacity to ensure a minimum of 20 feet between individual campsites. Pools can also start maintenance work to prepare for reopening, likely in time for the summer. However, sleepover camps are not permitted this year as part of the reopening of summer and outdoor activities in Nova Scotia. Now, along with private campgrounds, several different types of businesses around Nova Scotia are getting the green light to reopen on Thursday, June the 5th. They include restaurants, bars, wineries, distilleries, tap rooms, personal services such as hair salons, barber shops, spas, nail salons, and body art establishments, fitness facilities like gyms, yoga studios, and climbing facilities, and veterinarians. Other health providers can also reopen on June the 5th, provided they follow the protocols in their colleges' and associations' plans as approved by Nova Scotia's Public Health Division. These include dentistry and other self-regulated health professions such as optometry, chiropractic, and physiotherapy, and unregulated health professions such as massage therapy, podiatry, and neuropathy. However, that doesn't mean that things aren't still difficult for many services, businesses, and other organizations around the province, including Strait Area Transit. The Transit Cooperative pulled its vehicles off the road in mid-March following the declaration of the state of emergency here in Nova Scotia. With that state of emergency extended until June the 14th at the earliest, Strait Area Transit's board chair, Jim Mustard, is still trying to work with his colleagues to figure out just how the cooperative should be moving forward into the summer. I sat down with Jim Mustard a little earlier this week. We talked to each other via Skype. Here's that interview right now. And joining us from Skype today, we are pleased to welcome the chair of the board for Strait Area Transit, Jim Mustard, who, of course, is also the Inverness Municipal Councillor for the county's District 3. Jim, how are you this afternoon, sir?
Very well, Adam. I'm very well on this beautiful sunny Monday.
All right, that's terrific. That's terrific. We take the sun when we can, for sure. So it hasn't been all that sunny for Strait Area Transit over the past couple of months, as the Transit Cooperative, like many services around Nova Scotia, has had to take some drastic steps over the last little while to deal with COVID-19 and the accompanying social distancing protocols. Can you give us a sense, Jim, of when you folks started to realize that some services were going to have to be shut down and what the process was there? Can you take us back in time a little bit and tell us how this all started and what you folks did as a result?
Yeah, it was a fairly, fairly abrupt halt of services. Once the announcement was made on March 13th that basically a state of emergency was being called in Nova Scotia, by that Monday, effectively services were pulled off the road. So once again, there was so many unknowns for where the virus was and how it spread, and certainly for the transit, we know that social distancing is a real issue with regards to transit, and certainly our staff not being trained or aware of what protocols might be in place. So that was the moment that we really had to suspend services, and it was when most, March break was on at school, so there was really, it was a full stop for most of our institutions that we were serving, except for the hospitals, of course, but even they went into a different mode during that time.
Well, that's just it. Obviously, Community College, Nova Scotia Community College shutting down. Most of the universities as well shifting very quickly to online learning, just as the public school system. And like you say, medical appointments, especially those that were not deemed immediate and urgent, were all automatically shut down. So that takes a lot of your clientele off the road as well, too. So you folks have been off the highways for 2.5 months now. Can you give me a sense on what it would take to be able to get any vehicles back on the road?
Well, we have kept a skeleton crew going, so that we've had a couple of drivers and 3 buses available for any emergency medical. So doctor-ordered medical visits that we still are open to that. And then we've done some work with the food hampers that were donated by Seaside Communication, and we've been delivering those up the Inverness coast. We've done that 3 times, I believe. So we've maintained a fleet of a few vehicles and a couple of drivers on standby. But to really ramp up services again, what occurred during that period between when the state of emergency was called and the end of March, our manager at the time, Jessie McDonald, had applied for another job, and she'd put in a number of years being successful in what she did, managing a fairly growing and robust business cooperative for the people. Had obviously gained some skills, and so she got a job with the health authority, which is wonderful for her. But it also left us without a manager. So effectively, a board has stepped in to pick up, what's outstanding in terms of invoices and making sure everything's cleared up there. And one of the board members is on the front line, just answering the phones and making sure that's done. So we've stepped in as a board just to maintain the work that needs to be done, while we've also done some evaluation, I think, of the key positions as we move forward. So we've reposted for a manager position. Closed on Friday on the 25th of May. And would just be shortlisting and doing some interviews for that. So really that puts us in a position to really kind of ease a new manager in with regards to the complexity, what it is to run a transit that has as many moving parts as we have between Victoria County Transit and Straight Area Transit. It's a relatively huge operation, really, when you think of it, to just jump in and do that. So as we say, when will we get started again? When will we be ready to ramp up? I know that the Rural Transit Association is working on some protocols. I think by mid to end of June they're going to be releasing those and to all the rest of the transit so that we can work through them. They're just drafts at this time, so that we'll have some sense of how we're going to move forward with our drivers, our equipment, how we're going to maintain social distancing within the transit. So that's a work in progress. Looking like more the end of June would be the first opportunity to even discuss it, how we'd start up again. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, so we're looking at it certainly a few weeks down the road. Have you folks, you mentioned Victoria County's transit service, have you folks been in good communication with the other transit services being offered around the area? Of course, there's Antigonish Community Transit as well, too. Some of them not too far down the road from what Straight Area Transit does. Has there been good communication with all of the local networks in terms of being able to, as you mentioned, get a coordinated strategy, but also to give some moral support to each other during this difficult time?
No, absolutely. There's been a good, consistent communication from the leadership at the RTA, and so connecting all the rural transits, and they've been once again trying to update everyone as to what's happening. The province has really stepped up with some of their support too, in terms of just the fiscal side of it, because while transit's not going, there's still overhead costs, right? You're still paying insurance, you're still covering costs. It's not like going right to zero that you're being able to maintain everything. So we've been, I think, well supported by both the province and both the RTA to just be in communication that we're all in this together. We're all going to try and sort out how is the best way to kind of reemerge from this to offer a transit that's going to be effective for the clients and safe for the staff.
Now, obviously, you and I have had this discussion before that running a rural transit system is difficult at the best of times, especially in terms of being able to keep it financially sustainable. Has it been a sort of situation for you folks where it's evened out, that you're saving some money because the vehicles aren't on the road and the drivers aren't out in full force? Or is it even more difficult now because the revenue side of things has taken a plunge over the last couple of months? I mean, financially, how is Straight Area Transit doing at this point, and how will it be doing over the summer?
Well, I think, that's, we're right now working to do the year end. March 31st is our year end. It aligns with municipal budgets and provincial budgets. So ordinarily, municipal budgets would be set based on what our year end looks like in our projections. So we're really kind of still working through that. And I know at our municipality, it's a harder budget process when you're not in the same room all the time and you're trying to work through that. So there's some challenges for all of us right now. But what the province has done is it's forwarded the first 2 quarters of the CTAP payment, which is a payment for the dial-a-ride, which supports operations. So for Straight Area Transit, that represents about $45,000, and Victoria County Transit, a portion of that would be quite a bit less. But anyways, that gives us some maintenance and able to kind of cover our costs, because yes, a third of our budget comes from the in revenues in terms of fares. A third of our budget approximately comes from municipalities, and a third of our budget has grown on the provincial side as they see the importance of this. But what we're really going to have to do, Adam, as I say, once we get through what is the new protocol, how many people can you put on a bus, that's going to change a lot of the dynamics, probably of rural transit, in allowing us to be fair to the user and our public and being able to still be affordable, plus for us to run a service that that can be operationalized with the budgets that we previously had. So there's some work to be done. As I say, fortunately, we've got a good track record that we can use to kind of formulate, I think, some ways forward that will support the budgetary needs of the municipalities to know that, and then our users to be able to not see an increase in that fare. That's something we really care about. The province has to be a bit greater of a role to ensure that we can keep transit going.
Let me pick up on the municipal angle just for a second, Jim, if I could, because obviously you folks depend on funding from the municipal governments. Both the town of Port Hawkesbury and the county of Richmond have suggested that they're going to be going through a very difficult budget process in terms of just trying to stem the tide of red ink. I imagine that's very much the same in Inverness County as well, too. What's your sense in terms of Port Hawkesbury and Richmond as to whether they feel that they can continue to contribute to straight area transit as we go forward here?
Well, as rural transit, we started in 2007 with straight area transit at a very early stage to just see what was the uptake. And really, when I came on as board chair in 2012 or 13, we were almost at the end of it in terms of being able to maintain and try and do this, because there wasn't really enough support from the municipalities or the province at that time. Once we took off on that two-year pilot where the municipality of Inverness put in $140,000 for 2 years, allowed us that substantial investment to provide evidence that if you ran a consistent service, it was needed and used. So for us to evaluate how important this is it a basic service? It almost is a basic service. Coming out of the pandemic, you don't know what's going to be the pressures on individuals and families to be able to get to appointments, to be able to get to school, be able to get to jobs. It's not a given that everyone comes out of this in the same place they were when they went in. So I think for a municipality like us that's run a very effective service that, as you know, I think last year over 20-something thousand people using it, that you got to look at it as that it is that basic service that we've been able to adapt, shape, and make relevant to all our communities. So that as we go through our budgeting, I can see there's a lot of hard decisions that are going to be made. I would hope that the partnership between the provinces and the municipality will be stronger. And if there is some, budgeting stresses on the municipality, that conversation with the province can be, I think, a more productive one based on this sort of work that's been done to this point to substantiate rural transit as an integral piece of how rural communities are going to be able to maintain and strengthen their economies and their health of their communities.
Last question to you, Jim. This is about the experience that you've had and that the people that you've worked with have, the individual drivers and such. We know that this is not the first challenge that straight area transit has faced. There was a point just a few years ago where the service was pulled off the road due to financial difficulties. But as you said earlier, nobody really expects the width and breadth of a pandemic, and few people really plan for the width and breadth of a pandemic in terms of a service like a transit service that serves rural communities. What do you and your colleagues and the drivers and the employees think you'll take away from all of this as you go into the future, once this all settles down? Are there positive lessons having been learned from all this that you feel will help straight area transit as it heads into the 2020s in earnest?
Well, I mean, that's the loaded question here. What are the lessons learned? I think for me, the Atlantic Canadian experience with COVID has 19 has proven out that we're really good at what we need to do to stay safe. What I think we will learn going forward is that transit is an essential service, and it's been expanded across the whole region of Nova Scotia, and we will continue to be able to offer this service, and I think adopting whatever the best protocols and practices that come through. So I think we've learned a lot. Once again, I think straight area transit was a pioneer, taking in such a spread out rural area and being like you say, there was times where it was against the wall, but we never gave up, and sometimes had to regroup. That I think regrouping from this, I think our board is strong. I think our management drivers are dedicated and professional, and we'll be able to work with them to help support their needs in terms of what they need to go forward, feeling safe in their and professional in their roles. And then I think we can certainly, in working with our funders, provide them with the confidence that this transit will move forward to continue to build on the success that we've had in the last few years, to really show that we can be something that's really supportive of the whole community in the way that we've been able to provide charters, regular services, dial-a-ride, medical appointments. These are things that are essential for our community the more that we got into it. And having that there when we come out of the pandemic, in whatever way that is, will be something I think that Straight Area Transit is going to be well prepared for.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that new era when it comes. And we've covered a lot of ground in just a short time. Jim, I appreciate you giving us some time here today. Did you want to add anything else about all of this just before we wrap up here?
I think we've all been shaken by what's happened right now. And I think just having that in context, if everyone can be patient in terms of what it's going to take to get going again, that will be helpful to all of us. That we'll all learn how to move forward with this in so many ways that we're already doing. But so just asking for people's patience. We know that there's going to be probably some demands coming down that people are going to expect maybe transit can get going. So just bear with us. That's what I'll say. So,
all right. Well, we'll bear with you, and thank you for bearing with us as we carry the interview out. Jim Mustard, thanks so much for joining us on Telile 24/7 today.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for your time today.
No trouble
all the best.
At all. Jim Mustard is the Municipal Councillor for District 3 of Inverness County, and we are speaking to him today via Skype in his capacity as the Chair of the Board for Straight Area Transit. Stay tuned for more Telile 24/7 in just a moment. How should Richmond County be led on the municipal level? Should there be a continuation of the warden system that's currently in place? Or should Richmond residents have the opportunity to elect a mayor at large that would be separate from the 5 current council districts? That's a question that Richmond County municipal officials and residents have been batting around for the past 5 years. And at last week's regular monthly meeting of Richmond Council, it seemed that the question was going to take a step forward, and we could soon have an answer to it in the coming days. We'll tell you a little more about that in just a moment, but first, here's a bit of background for you. The concept of a mayor at large for Richmond County first took hold in 2015. At the time, the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board was holding hearings in Richmond County to determine whether the number of council districts should drop from the present 10 down to 7 or 5. During that period, 4 Richmond municipal councillors and several county residents floated the concept that Richmond should consider going to an elected mayor-at-large system as opposed to a warden system that had been in place for several decades. The governance issue finally came to a formal vote at the January 2016 meeting of Richmond Municipal Council. At the time, there were still 10 councillors serving for the county, and a majority of them voted to send the request to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board to be able to make the switch from a warden system to a mayor system in time for the October 2016 municipal elections. However, despite this vote in favour, it came a month late for the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board to be able to accept it, and so the warden system continued into the October 2016 municipal elections, with Brian Marchand emerging as the new warden following the elections. The new council embarked on a strategic planning exercise for Richmond County, and part of that strategic planning process was a survey conducted among county residents to determine whether they would prefer a mayor or a warden governing them. The wide majority of those that took part in this survey decided they would prefer to have a mayoral system as opposed to the continuation of the warden system. So in 2019, the county tried to decide whether it should hold further public consultation to augment the approximately 300 people that had filled in this survey in the hopes of getting a greater sample and a more significant result. However, in September of 2019, council narrowly voted 3-2, with Warden Brian Marchand casting the deciding vote against a motion that would have seen $3,500 spent on public consultations during the fall to determine once and for all whether Richmond residents were solidly behind the mayor option or whether they wanted to keep the warden system. The issue lay silent for another few months until last month's regular council session held by Zoom. CAO Don Marchand updated council on discussions that he had had with the Department of Municipal Affairs as well as Elections Nova Scotia on the concept that residents might be able to choose between a mayor or a warden system for the 2024 elections when they voted in a special ballot that would be included with their municipal election ballot this coming fall. Here's how CAO Marchand described his conversations with Municipal Affairs Representative Ross MacDonald.
And he referred me to a section in the Municipal Government Act that dealt with the municipality's ability to hold a plebiscite. He did say that it's a question I should pose to the provincial elections official, Sandy Hudson. So once he told me that, he also told me that Sandy Hudson was going to be out for 2 weeks. So he's going to be returning back the first week of June, which is next week. So I didn't want to send him an email now in light of the fact that he may have not responded or overlooked it. So I do plan on sending him an email later on this week or early next week to find out if there's any process that we can follow to include such a question on the ballot. I mean, there is no option that I know of aside from creating a new ballot itself, which obviously would create some expense to create that ballot. And I don't know how it would work with the returning officer and the poll clerks and everybody that would be involved in the election to hold. Would there be an extra fee, or I'm not really sure how he's going to respond to me. So, I mean, I could wait until Sandy does get back from, I believe he must be on vacation of some sort, and I can pose him that question and find out what he has to say.
Following the Richmond CAO's comments, there was still some disagreement among Richmond councillors as to whether they should hold a separate plebiscite on the mayor-warden question and whether or not Richmond Council had already gathered enough data to be able to put the issue to rest. However, Council agreed to await for the results of the conversation between their CAO and Elections Nova Scotia officials, which is expected to happen sometime this week and could put the wheels in motion for residents to choose between a mayor or a warden system for Richmond County as early as this fall's municipal elections.
What a difference a year makes for Cape Breton's tourism industry. In 2019, the industry enjoyed record numbers as part of a record-setting year here in Nova Scotia. But things couldn't possibly be bleaker this spring, and it looks like that could continue well into the summer thanks to COVID-19 and the accompanying social distancing restrictions here in Nova Scotia. There have been no end to the cancellation of festivals and community events, including such marquee events as the Granville Green Concert Series in Port Hawkesbury and the island-wide Celtic Colours Folk Festival that's scheduled for every October but is now going online this fall for the first time in its history. To make matters worse, cruise ships announced that they weren't going to be coming to either the Port of Sydney or the Port of Halifax over the next 5 months, and that could make things even more difficult for a tourism industry that's already struggling. So we decided to speak to Terry Smith. He's the Chief Executive Officer for the major umbrella group overlooking tourism in Cape Breton Island. It's called Destination Cape Breton Association. Here's that conversation with Terry Smith right now.
And we're very pleased to welcome the CEO of Destination Cape Breton Association, Terry Smith, to Telile 24/7. You're in Myra today, Terry. How is the weather over there, and how are things holding up out on the Myra?
Well, it's beautiful out on the Myra today, and it was only a couple of weeks ago that I would look out my window and see snow coming down. So it's great that we're seeing some temperatures up in the 20s. So it's getting better, and summer's coming.
All right. Every little bit will help at a time like this. Yes, we are finished with the snow. At least we certainly hope we are, for sure. So in all seriousness, though, your job and the job of the people you represent got significantly harder over the last couple of months with the arrival of COVID-19 and the related social distancing protocols here in Nova Scotia. Can you wind the clock back a little bit and give us a sense as to when you and the tourism stakeholders here in Cape Breton Island got a sense that something was going wrong and that this could be really, really huge in terms of its impact this summer? Was it mid-March when the social distancing protocols crept in, or did you have a sense even before that that you folks needed to prepare for this?
Well, we were watching probably late February, early March, around that time, whenever Canada first got a case, but even then, it still seemed like this is something from somewhere, a distant thing, and it wasn't really clear how this might affect us. And I think it was around March 11th or 12th when the day that all the sports leagues kind of announced that they were shutting down. I think it clued in then. I remember, I think that was a Thursday, because I remember going into the office on Friday and saying to our team that, we're probably going to be closing the office in about 2 weeks. And that was on Friday. And then I went back in on Monday and closed the office that day. So it snuck up. We knew there was a pandemic, of course, but it got close to home very fast, and then it was trying to just sort out, what is this going to mean for our industry? Is this going to shut everything down for the whole season, and so forth? And to be honest, we're still working through those issues, but that's kind of how it started.
Well, that's just it. As you mentioned, everything has changed bit by bit as we go. And I mean, it feels like someone in your position and someone in the position anywhere in the tourism industry in Cape Breton almost has to rip up the plan and start a new plan every other week, to say nothing of every other day these days. What are you hearing from the individual tourism operators? And we look at people like bed and breakfasts and hotels and motels, campgrounds, even restaurants and event planners. What's the mood been like over the last couple of months? And is that mood improving at all, as it looks like Nova Scotia may be willing to loosen up some of the social distancing restrictions that we've had in the past?
Well, the mood initially was just one of concern and worry. Just, how long is this going to go on? How is it going to affect our season? What supports are going to be in place? And, I think that the federal government announced some things. They had to change a little bit and learn as they were going, and announce changes to programs, things like the wage subsidy and so forth. So as those programs rolled out, we were in contact with operators around the island pretty regularly, just to get a sense of, are those programs working for them? Who is slipping through the gaps? And then we're communicating that to folks we know that would be able to influence the situation, like our two MPs, and we're a member of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. So they were meeting with the decision makers in Ottawa on a regular basis. So doing things like that. And to be honest, there is still concern among operators, because even though I would say most tourism operators have benefited from some of the supports from the federal and provincial government, some haven't. In some cases, just the criteria doesn't fit them. In some cases, for small businesses, especially newer ones that had just started up, they're just not in a position to take on more debt. And almost all of these programs have been structured around loans. So some people just aren't in a position to take advantage of that. So we're still advocating for more support, specifically for the tourism industry, because even all the billions probably that's been announced, nothing is going to come close to replacing the peak season revenues that these operators were depending upon, and it's those revenues that keep them going through the winter. As many of them are seasonal, to keep them sustainable and paying all the bills through the winter. So we're still pushing for that. In terms of the mood now, I think it's shifted to for many operators that they are eager to get open. Especially here in the province, we have, as of today, 17 active cases, so it's coming down. They're eager to open things up, but there's a lot of questions about what the protocols are going to be, and we're hopeful for answers soon from the province on that.
Do you get the sense, Terry, that even if, just throwing a figure out there, these operations are able to open at even a third capacity or a quarter capacity through the next few months, if social distancing restrictions ease up, that this might be too much for them to bear, that, not wanting to look at it fatalistically, but that there could be a real risk that some of the smaller operations might not survive 2020 and might not be around to welcome visitors in 2021?
Well, that's my concern, and I've spoken to a number of smaller. It seems to be smaller or newer operations that seem to be affected the most, and they're very concerned. Yeah, they might be able to salvage a little bit through this season, but then paying the bills through the winter, that's really a question, and I'm very concerned that we're going to lose some operators. And some important operators as well in terms of the experiences they provide. So yeah, we still firmly believe that more specific support is needed for the tourism industry.
I wanted to ask you as well about the idea of festivals and events and how much they bring to the tourism table as well. And right now we're looking at a pretty empty landscape throughout the summer. Pretty much everything you could name of a large and small scale has been canceled, leading right up to the recent announcement of the Celtic Colours Festival going completely online in October. Can you paint a picture for me of what kind of a dent that puts into the tourism industry as well, and how difficult it is to be able to entice visitors here, even if they can be brought here when there are no festivals or events in the communities?
Yeah, so Celtic Colours, as an example, I mean that is kind of the signature event that we have on the island. The economic impact of that was $18.7 million to Cape Breton's economy in 2019. So that's just, it's huge. And I think it must have been a gut-wrenching decision for them to have to change to an online performance for this year. But I think they're doing the best that they can to ensure that they keep interest among people that come back and are interested in the festival year after year. So I think I applaud them for taking this step, and we are planning to be partners with them in those live streams. As far as some of the other events around the island, some of them do motivate people to come here to visit. I think of something like Pirate Days in St. Peter's, for example, a wonderful event. There are people that I met them that they come down from different places to take part in that event, and the whole community of St. Peter's is buzzing, and the surrounding area as well. So things like that, it probably won't be able to happen at all this year, which is very unfortunate. So that's going to mean that some people will not come to the island, won't be staying in our accommodations, won't be eating in our restaurants and so forth. So it's a major thing. And just for those who do come, so we still have some experiences to offer, but for those who do come, festivals and events, just the community festivals and events that happen all over the island, they are a big part of what people want to experience when they come. Our visitors tend to be folks that they want to do what the locals do. They want to, you know, rub shoulders with Cape Bretoners and have conversations, get to know them a little bit, and experience what local communities would be doing. So that's going to be something that is sorely missed by those who do come to the island this year.
In the face of all this, Terry, I know the Destination Cape Breton Association has done what they can to try to offer some positives to the community. And one of the ways that you folks did that is a campaign that's just starting to wrap up now, the 30 Days of Thanks campaign for various island organizations and individuals. I know municipalities have come on board and supporting this as well, too, including Richmond and Port Hawkesbury here in our coverage area. Can you tell me a bit about how that all came about and how it seems to have worked out in terms of being able to boost some morale?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the initial concept of was that we should do something around gift certificates, and Dan Coffin, who was the tourism director in Victoria County, and I had a conversation, and then I took it back to our marketing team, and they came up with this concept, 30 Days of Thanks, to recognize the contributions of some of our essential service providers around the island, and at the same time, it allows us to reward them with some gift certificates, gift cards to take part in various tourism businesses, tourism experiences around the island as well, and in many cases, hopefully, because what we've done is. When for example, somebody from it's a day when Richmond County is the presenting sponsor of the campaign, we will have an experience that brings somebody to Richmond County to experience Richmond County experiences. But we always make sure that the person is from outside of Richmond County, so that they will be coming in and spending more time in a community, and you know, in some cases maybe they'll be visiting a community that they haven't visited in a long time, or maybe not ever. So it's a way to just get a little bit of support for our operators, and recognize those essential service workers, and hopefully just prime the pump in terms of getting people interested in exploring our island this summer.
In that spirit, Terry, I want to talk about the idea of the staycation for both Cape Bretoners and for Nova Scotians. I know in a recent interview, Mary Pat Mumberket of the Glace Bay Miners Museum suggested that upwards of 85% of her visitors are from off-island, and I imagine that figure holds up around many parts of Cape Breton Island. Do you get the sense that with COVID-19 and with the restrictions that we've been experiencing and the travel restrictions that'll result, that this is a wonderful opportunity for Cape Bretoners to be able to find a part of the island that they've never discovered or haven't been to for a while? Could this help us through what could be a difficult summer?
Absolutely, and that's part of the campaign that we'll be launching in just a couple of weeks. You know, we have just an amazing island that we live in, and I've been fortunate to get to travel most of it, but there are many people, you know, it's been years since they've gone around the Cabot Trail, or maybe they've never been to Arashat before, or Petit de Gras, you know, to promote some of the hidden gems on the island, or the lesser traveled places. That will be part of what we do, just to try to get people moving all around the island and not just going to the more popular tourist areas. So that's going to be part of the campaign that we roll out, because you know, it's there's something special, you know, wherever you go on the island that you can experience. My wife and I were just as they announced that we could go to parks and stuff recently, we took a trip out to Morrison's Beach, which is the far eastern end of Richmond County, but which is just spectacular, and just seeing that, and posted some photos, and then everybody's saying, where is that? So hopefully we can encourage some people to get out and do something that they haven't done in a long time, or maybe for the first time.
We're doing this interview, Terry, during Tourism Week, and obviously this is bittersweet to be looking at Tourism Week right now. I know that just yesterday, you folks at Destination Cape Breton Association put out figures that shown that Cape Breton's numbers have been climbing year by year, and in some cases reaching record highs in 2019. That being said, even with a difficult period like 2020 and the possibility of a second wave carrying us well into the new year, do you get the sense that there are lessons that are being learned by yourself and by your organization and by the tourism stakeholders around Cape Breton Island? Are there any positives that we can take away from this that might help the tourism industry overall in the years to come after we get through this?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, well, hopefully from just a human being perspective, that we all, cherish what is important in life, and maybe don't get as caught up in the rat race, and take more time to smell the flowers, and to get out and explore our beautiful island. So that can be part of it. But for the industry, we certainly expect, one of the things that we try to we've been hammering away at for a while is just to try to get visitors to spend more time on the island, and to go to more areas of the island. I've met visitors that, whether they're from Ontario or the States, who have told me, we've only got 2 days in Cape Breton, and we've done the western side of the Cabot Trail yesterday, and we're doing the eastern side tomorrow, and then we're off to PEI. And my message is like that's crazy. You're spending your whole vacation in a car, and you're not really getting to know the destination, and she is worth getting to know. So anyway, I think that's one thing that we're going to continue to try to push for people to spend 5 to 7 days or longer here on the island. And one of the things that is mindful for me, I just saw some research this morning in terms of residents and how they feel about welcoming visitors into their communities this summer in the midst of this pandemic. And there's definitely a lot more we have to do to provide confidence to local residents in that regard, and hopefully that's coming. But as we go forward, I think we're going to pay a lot more attention to communicating with our own residents, and to ensuring that we want to continue to grow the tourism industry, but we want to do it in a way that is respectful of communities, that's not changing the character of communities, that is supporting our rich and vibrant culture, so that continues. Those are things that I think we have to do if we're going to retain what really makes Cape Breton Island special. So we'll be thinking about that a lot more, and then coming back with some approaches so that we can have a better finger on the pulse.
Well, we'll hope for the very best from those discussions and from the next few months, as difficult as they might be, Terry. We've covered a lot of ground in this interview. I appreciate you taking some time for me. Did you want to add anything else about all of this just before we wrap up here today?
Well, I'd just say for anyone who's watching, I would encourage you this year to get out and explore your island, and whether that's in your own backyard, supporting some of the wonderful restaurants and experiences that you have there, and going somewhere that you haven't gone before. I mean, even with social distancing, Cape Breton has so much to offer in terms of outdoor experiences, hiking, kayaking, golfing, things like boating and sailing, going to a beach, surfing, things like that can still be done safely while keeping a distance. And so those are the things that we certainly encourage people to get out and do. And please support your tourism operators in your community. If you got people coming to visit, instead of saying, well, we can pull out the spare couch, why don't you suggest that they stay at the place down the road and might be spending a few dollars, but that business could really use that business right now.
Definitely so. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Terry, for giving us some time here. We wish everybody in the Cape Breton tourism industry well, and hope to be able to catch up with you a little ways down the road to see how everything is going.
Well, thank you very much, Adam, and it's my pleasure.
And that wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'd like to thank our two guests for this week, Terry Smith and Jim Mustard. And a big thank you to the team at Telile for helping me get the show on the air every week. Special thanks this time around to Cora LeBlanc and Amanda Skinner. Just a reminder that you can check out Telile 24/7 online. You can catch every single episode of the show, including this one, on our YouTube channel. And you can also see individual interviews and stories from our previous episodes of Telile 24/7. And you can also follow Telile Community Television on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's all the time we have for this week. I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you once again for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new edition of Telile 24/7.